Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritangamaya, avirāvirma eti, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, te namam pahi nityam. At the outset, I convey my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of this conference. My namaskar and best wishes to all the dignitaries, the scholars, faculties, students present in this auditorium. The main focus point of my discussion will be spiritual enculturation, advaita vedānta, particularly insights into Nishkama Seva as advocated by Ramakrishna mission. The meta-narrative of Indian civilization has always been anchored in the routinization of spirituality across different socio-cultural strata of its large human resources. Through the passage of time, Indian life, in the midst of immense turbulence, has witnessed that the spiritual mission is the cardinal thrust area of its all sorts of endeavor. In the process of enculturation, Indian tradition has always taught its followers such values and norms which are deeply rooted in the spiritual discourses that have designed and dictated the lives of innumerable seekers of truth on this soil of highest purity. Caste, creed, color, wealth, language, sex, or habits fail to create any barrier in this voyage of realization and actualization of the sublime legacy of Indian spirituality. Indian spiritual tradition has never rejected the phenomenal externality of the macro and micro level creation, but has always journeyed towards the internality of our existence. In Indian spiritual ethos, the target set for a seeker is no less than the realization of the ultimate reality, the characteristics being uniquely different based on the faith-dictated denominations. While arriving at the highest plane of this supreme reality, all branches of Hinduism, the Sanatana Dharma, insist upon the adoption of the path of renunciation as the most important route. Further, the fundamental concept of renunciation in Indian philosophy, in Indian spirituality rather, has always received its inspiration from an immensely important postulate which clearly announces that the physical world is Maya, a transitory one, without any external existential value. The only truth which exists perpetually is always beyond this physical appearance. The world exists only because of the existence of the Brahman, the ever pure consciousness that pervades everything, both this microcosm and macrocosm. Well, now one may ask, if the Atman or Brahman is the only true ultimate reality and the entire world is a false drama, then why are we not able to realize it? Why? Why is everyone running after to get the pleasure at physico-psycho level? Why is the number of actual spiritual seekers is so less? Our Upanishads clearly says, this is only due to ignorance, avidya. While the entire creation is nothing but for the avidya, each individual is also deluded because of the existence of almost the same type of avidya. Maximum of us are not able to get rid of this bondage of the avidya and feel that we are very happy with this world, with its funs and pleasures. However, when sufferings occur, we become prostrated, start lamenting, and blame everyone along with the destiny. Sometimes such shocks become so heavy and burdensome that we fail to endure. But to a spiritual seeker, these waves of pains and pleasures are so normal that they allow, accept, and accommodate them with a perfect tranquility, with an unwavering focus of mind towards his aim, the realization of the ultimate reality. He knows that all these are the spores of the avidya which will automatically cease to exist once one builds up this unbreakable bridge between the individual self and the cosmic one. Here comes next step. How can we attain this freedom, the freedom from this bondage? Indian spiritual system has thus prescribed the micro-level solutions against this question. Primarily, there are 4 paths. This is truly a 4-fold scheme for every individual seeker who aspires to go beyond this imprisonment of avidya. They are Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. We should remember that these are interdependent paths. However, based on the dominance of one path, such nomenclatures have been given. Jnana Yoga mainly deals with the methods of judgment, judging what is real and what is unreal. Ultimately, they discriminate the real and unreal and dive deep into meditation to realize the real. The sadhaka Bhakti Yoga accepts the God as his very dear and near one, and hence, with a perfect form of highest level of love, progresses to reach the destination. A Raja Yogi strives to control his chitta vrittis, and with the help of the tapasya, swadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana, ultimately becomes able to attenuate these vrittis, which results in attaining the highest level of samadhi. These are 3 principal paths as prescribed in our traditional scriptures for the spiritual seekers, along with the 4th one, the Karma Yoga. A Karma Yogi is traditionally said should try to do the karmas without aspiring any result, with a perfect non-attachment, and then his mind stuff will become purified, which will ultimately make him eligible to take any one of the 3 principal paths, Jnana, Bhakti, or Raja. In 19th century, with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna and his illustrious disciple Swami Vivekananda, the spiritual practices as delineated in our ancient scriptures have been relooked and rejuvenated, especially for the rank and file of the humankind. Further, Swami Vivekananda, being spiritually tutored by Sri Ramakrishna, has added a new value to the path of Karma Yoga. In this new age philosophy, it has been stated that all of us start with work and worship. At the outset, we work with some desire in my mind and also continues my worship for the purification of mind. Here the work is linked with our spiritual progress. But a karma yogi should strive to convert this path of work and worship into the path of work as worship. However, he should not stop there. His next attempt should be to convert the path of work as worship, to convert this path of work is worship, or to the work as worship, to the path of work is worship. This work is worship is the highest level of sadhana in Karma Yoga. This type of spiritual practice is only possible if a seeker works with perfect non-attachment. Although it is very difficult, it is possible. In our lives, we have witnessed some such examples. For such a karma yogi, sacrifice and service become two strong legs to walk in the avenue of the real spirituality. Swami Vivekananda has said, self-sacrifice, not self-assertion, is the highest law of the universe. Religion comes with intense self-sacrifice. Therefore, according to him, unselfishness is God. I would also like to preface this discussion with a few statements that occur in Sister Nivedita's introduction to the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. I resort to these perceptive observations in the hope that we adopt a very approach in the matter of making any categorical assertion about Swamiji's Karma Yoga being different from the Karma Yoga as understood in the Vedic spiritual tradition of Hinduism. Sister Nivedita writes, quote, the Swami Vivekananda would have been less than he was had anything in this evangel of Hinduism been his own. Like every great teacher that Indian thought has known, his sentences are laden with quotations from the Vedas and Upanishads. He stands merely as the revealer, the interpreter to India of the treasures that she herself possesses in herself. The truths he preaches would have been as true had he never been born. Nay, more, they would have been equally authentic. The difference would have lain in their difficulty of access, in their want of modern clearness and incisiveness of statement, and in their loss of mutual coherence and unity. Had he not been, text that today will carry the bread of life to thousands might have remained the obscure disputes of scholars. Unquote. In our discussion, we will have to keep these quoted sentences in sharp focus. If we were indeed to assume that Karma Yoga as propounded by Swamiji is different from that which occurs in our scripture, it would be necessary at the very least to go back to those scriptural sources where the Karma Yoga as an independent ideal has been discussed. Now, Hinduism's scriptural sources being the Upanishads, that is the essence of the Veda, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra, our search for the scriptural reference on Karma Yoga must, of necessity, be confined to these sources. Before we proceed further, let's quickly go over the meaning of Karma Yoga. Distinct from ordinary karma, Karma Yoga is a spiritual discipline based on selfless action. And because it is a spiritual discipline, Karma Yoga, just like any other yogas, has the same goal of attaining spiritual illumination. Now, does the performance of selfless action or sacrifice have the scriptural sanction of being an authentic spiritual practice leading to the highest goal of life, that is moksha? The answer is yes. And this affirmation is to be found in the concept of yajna, discovered by the Vedic seers in their meditative awareness. Yajna, we must not forget, was very symbolic of the spiritual practice of sacrifice. That is the emptying of the individual self into the cosmic self. In the famous Purusha Sukta hymn of the Rig Veda, we find the description of God being worshipped through sacrifice. Yajnena yajnam ayayanta devaha. They worshipped God through the sacrifice. In a similar strain, we find the Bhagavad Gita, such verses as Yat karoshi yadasnasi yad yuhosi dadasi yat tavastyasi kunte yat kurushva madarpanam. Also, we find in the Bhagavad Gita the assertion that following the path of Karma Yoga, Janaka and others attain spiritual illumination. Thus, Such verses from Hinduism's main scriptures unmistakably point to Karma Yoga as either a means of attaining spiritual perfection or as an expression of living life in accordance with the divine rhythm of the cosmos. Against this background of our discussion so far, we may wonder about the newness of the Karma Yoga as propounded by Swami Vivekananda. To appreciate the novelty of Swamiji's Karma Yoga, we have to take into account some significant religious cultural changes that took place in India in the post-Vedic centuries, that is from 600 BC onwards. These momentous changes were brought about chiefly by Mimamsaka philosophers and Buddhistic philosophers. On one hand, the Mimamsaka philosophers emphasized pravritti marga with a view to attaining heaven after death, and on the other hand, Buddhistic philosophers systematically went about preaching against the supreme conclusion of the Vedas, that is, permanence of our spiritual self. Indeed, Hinduism's Upanishadic lofty spiritual tradition was in imminent danger of either being misinterpreted as a heaven-promising religion based on meritorious acts or being dismissed as inconsequential. These double changes were squarely met by Shankaracharya, whose sole goal was to establish the supremacy of non-dual Brahman. However, Sri Shankara, strangely situated as he was with having to stand up to both Mimamsaka and Buddhist philosophers, found himself relegating selfless action to a secondary place in the scheme of spiritual life. That is, according to Shankara, unselfish action can at most purify the mind, but it cannot lead to final spiritual illumination, the deliverance, the freedom, the moksha. The situation was further complicated by the post-Shankara Advaitic philosophers' relentless dialectics on proving the unreality of the world. No wonder the philosophic view went on to encourage people to treat the path of Nivritti Marga for spiritual fulfillment. Thus, the combined effect of these changes not only took India away from her Vedic ethos of selfless action or sacrifice being a chief means of spiritual perfection, it also created in the minds of Indian people a strange apathy towards work in general. It goes without saying that this inactivity cost India dearly in her being enslaved for a number of centuries. However, in the mid-19th century, during her political subjugation under the Britishers, India's long slumber of inactivity was rudely jolted, and she found herself galvanized into action. Suddenly, finding herself in a flurry of unaccustomed activity, what India in particular needed was a robust philosophy of work which would combine her creative participation in work with her inherent spiritual aspiration. In other words, she was now unconsciously waiting for the ideal of selfless work to be back with its lost prestige of spiritual eminence. Fortunately enough, responding to this urgent need, Swami Vivekananda made us the great gift of this philosophy of work, that is Nishkama Karma Yoga, thus reinstating the Vedic vision of the supreme efficacy of selfless action as a spiritual path, an ideal that was temporarily lost to our sight during a couple of intervening centuries. Indeed, in the reinstatement of this lost ideal of Karma Yoga, Swamiji's original contribution lay in his reinterpretation of the words pravritti and nivritti. Earlier, pravritti and nivritti had come to mean the involvement in work and abstention from work respectively. But Swamiji took the etymological meanings of these words derived from the Sanskrit root Dvik, meaning revolving, circling. According to Swamiji, pravritti means revolving towards and nivritti means revolving away from the little self of man. So, anything that makes one move towards his little self, me and the mind, causes bondage and is unethical and irreligious. Anything that takes us away from the bondage of the little self is ethical and religious. Swamiji explains this. Quote, here are two Sanskrit words. These are Swamiji's words. Here are two Sanskrit words. The one is pravritti, which means revolving towards. And the other is nivritti, which means revolving away. The revolving towards is what we call the world and that are I and mine. It includes all those things which are always enriching that me by wealth and money and power and name and fame, and which are of a grasping nature, always tending to accumulate everything in one center, that center being myself. That is the pravritti, the natural tendency of every human being, taking everything from everywhere and heaping it around one center, that center being man's own sweet self. When this tendency begins to break, when it is nivritti or going away from, then begin morality and religion. Both pravritti and nivritti are of the nature of work. The former is evil work and the latter is good work. This nivritti is the fundamental basis of all morality and all religion. And the very perfection of it is entire self-abnegation, readiness to sacrifice mind and body and everything for another being. When a man has reached the state, he has attained to the perfection of Karma Yoga. This is the highest result of good works. Unquote. Thus, following the path of nivritti, we will not cease to do any work. Instead, we will be able to convert our work into worship. This is the essence of Karma Yoga. As we have stated earlier, work is worship. Explaining this, Sister Nivedita writes in an allied context, quote, this is the realization which makes Vivekananda the great preacher of karma, not as divorced from, but as expressing jnana and bhakti. Unquote. Let's now delve a little into the philosophy of Karma Yoga as articulated by Swamiji. Swamiji's philosophy of Karma Yoga is based upon an exalted vision of man. Now, down the ages, savants have viewed man through the prism of their own understanding. Scientists, economists, social and political thinkers, and the like have had their distinctive perception of what man is. Accordingly, their contributions to the human progress remain necessarily confined to those aspects which they consider central to man, within quote. While we remain beholden to them for their contribution, their approach had the redeeming defect of ignoring the spiritual nature of man. Prophets of religion, on the other hand, having necessarily recognized man's perennial connection with the Supreme Godhead, have always endeavored to nurture only the spiritual aspect of man, remaining as it were indifferent to the other aspects of man. While divinity indeed constitutes the core of man, the human aspect of man surely cannot be wished away. It has always been a microscopic minority who take to an exclusive spiritual life. Are the vast majority of people then dignified in their respective stations of life, doomed forever to remain with limited conceptions of manhood. In both the above views about man, what was admittedly missing was the understanding of man in his entirety, that is, an understanding in which none of the relative aspects of human personality would be disregarded, and yet these aspects would be subsumed into the divine reality within. What was required was a robust and most practical philosophy, which remaining firmly hitched to the pole star of man's divine core, would guide man to divinize his day-to-day activities. No doubt, Swami Vivekananda was schooled under the holiest and most authentic supervision and counseling of Sri Ramakrishna, but the way he explicated and disclosed the New Age memorandum of spiritual practices can never be underestimated. There are 6 distinct contributions of Swami Vivekananda in making the practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga a new road to the realization of the ultimate. These are: 1. Expounding the aphorism of Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva in the light of scriptures and thus providing it a strong philosophical foundation. 2. Introducing the praxis of the cutting-edge philosophy through a large scale of social activities for reshaping the social attitudes of the modern generations. 3. Involving the spiritual practices with the service for the upliftment of downtrodden masses. 4. Conceptualizing and actualizing the Seva theory clubbed with Nishkama Karma Yoga through a Hindu monastic order and thereby involving the monks as agents of social transformation. 5. Eradication the distinction between sacred and secular. 6. Insistence of the theory that this Sheva is a direct path to Mukti and thus giving a new nomenclature of the yoga as Seva Yoga. Finally, after ages of wait, this novel philosophy was forged into the heart of Swami Vivekananda. To this great lover of humanity, it was an inescapable conclusion that divine could never be separated from the Sri itself stands deified. It is evident that our age will claim greater and greater energy, time and service from us for the benefit of human beings in all their aspects. No wonder work done in the spirit of service must necessarily become the dominant spiritual practice of our age. Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, the great edifice designed by Ramakrishna, affectionately reared up by Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi, was ultimately brought into action by Swami Vivekananda. It is the holy order of monks of New India which is regularly and sincerely practicing the ideal of Nishkama Karma Yoga, with the new name Seva Yoga, through its all sorts of activities. In the last financial year, the total expenditure of this monastic order in educational services is rupees 613.95 crores. In medical service, 421.80 crores. In rural development services, rupees 92.04 crores. And in other services, rupees 194.12 crores. Statistics is not the main factor, but the attitude is really drawing the attention of people from different strata of the society because of the dedication, sincerity, purity of the purpose and complete self-abnegation. To it, students are veritable forms of the Brahman, patients are visible forms of the ultimate reality, and workplaces are nothing but the holy floors of the temple. Monks are trained to dive deep into meditation and worship the afflicted ones as their Ishta. They read scriptures, they mock signs, they worship the deities, and they reach to the flood distressed people. They beg alms not for themselves, but for the sustenance of suffering millions. Romarola has truly concluded his excellent biography on Vivekananda with these words. I will also conclude my talk quoting Romarola's this statement. Romarola says, quote, "My European companions, I have made you listen through the wall to the blows of the coming one, Asia. go to meet her. She's working for us. We are working for her. God is resting and has left to us His most beautiful creation, that of the seventh day, to free the sleeping forces of the enslaved spirit, to reawaken God in man, to recreate the being itself. And for this, Swami Vivekananda and the Ramakrishna mission are being given the entire responsibility. Thank you. Namaskar.
So when I was trying to listen to you, you were mentioning for a couple of centuries, the shift had taken a different direction. I was curious to know which couple of centuries you mean and why it happened, and if at all it happened.
In fact, I have already mentioned why it happened. In fact, it is right from the 4th or 5th century AD, this started. However, from the 9th and 10th century AD, we saw this enslaving. In fact, this type of forgetfulness of our own Indian ethos has started functioning in our society. And because of this dependence on the influx of different other foreign cultures, we somehow became enslaved. Naturally, this is a great historical discussion. There may be a debate on it, but undoubtedly it's true that during these last almost more than 1,000 years, as there are so many different types of intrusions were there, different types of political powers came from other lands. Naturally, perhaps Indian society became a little, they came into their own caves. They were not very much eager to come out. That's the main thing happened in the history.
Pranam Swami. This is more a little bit of a remark as well as I would want your reflection on this. At the turn of the 20th century, which is just crossing over, we had this independence movement and we had great spiritual masters like Sri Aurobindo who were inspired by Swami Vivekananda himself. And one of the most remarkable statements that Sri Aurobindo makes in his integral yoga is to liberate the material power of the material wealth from the asuric forces to put it for the action of the dharmic causes or the enlightened purpose. In this regard, probably traditionally we had a view that spirituality is averse to wealth or the management of the wealth or material usage of the wealth. And this was, I think, a tectonic shift that I think when you quoted those numbers of just one financial year, kind of what mission has done, this is a tremendous shift in our worldview and in our thought process, which is putting the Shakti for the right purpose and the right usage. I just wanted to hear your reflection on this, that what role the material wealth in itself plays pertinently right now in the current scheme of things, and what is its importance to put it for this purpose. How should a spiritual institution really aspire to gather their material sources for benefiting the greater dharmic cause, if I were to put it?
You see, in our Ramakrishna motto and vision, in this monastic order, as I have already mentioned here, in fact, as the time is very less, in fact, I skipped some more data and some more lines. You see, whenever a monastic organization comes into being, naturally with the slow progress of the external society, these monastic organizations also amass some wealth. But naturally, being a monastic organization, its ultimate aim must be to spend the money for the welfare of the humanity, as Ramakrishna mission does. Because I have told you the famous aphorism, it has been in fact pronounced by Sri Ramakrishna himself, Shiva Jnane Jiva Shiva. So, our spiritual practices in this Ramakrishna order is to see the Shiva in the afflicted jiva. In fact, in every jiva, not only afflicted jiva. We call Narendrapur. The Nara is nothing but Narayana. In our puja ceremonies, whenever we complete all these types of pujas, Durga puja, Kali puja, or whatever puja, there is a very unique mantra. The mantra goes like this: Pratar Arabhya Sayanam Sayanhat pratarantata yat karomi jaganamata tadastatava pujanam. Starting from the morning up to the twilight, and again from the evening up to the morning, whatever we will do, let all these be your worship, O my mother. So this is the only path, this is the way of a spiritual practice that Ramakrishna mission has introduced. So whenever we get some money, our target is, as I have already told, that we beg alms. Just other day in my Ramakrishna, I am at Narendrapur, other day one person from one very reputed industrial house came to visit Narendrapur. So I told him, you see, for this development, for this work, for this service, we need some CSR from you. Then he, a slight light active tone, he told me, Swamiji, you are also requiring money. I told you, see, we don't need it. Yes, whenever we are staying here naturally, to stay for our living, something we may need, much minimum. But when we go for serving the people, naturally we just beg alms. This is the Vikyavritti. Vikshavritti, you know, Pravraja and the Vikshavritti are the two main things that our sannyasins, ascetics do in our Indian tradition. So this should be the motto of every monastic organization.
Swami, it was really a very eye-opening. You have covered a wide range of things from Adhyatmik Samajikaram to Abhidhar Banditya, and from this Banditya Khanasthaitya. And then also you have given a very clear picture how things have happened. And then while this culturalization of the ideas, I was listening to and I was going back to my childhood days, because slowly we are losing our rural life and villages. And this when Nishkam Seva, that Seva, as I am from Assam, and as Vinod said, that in our Bharatmunis Navaras, there was the 10th Rasa is the Seva Rasa.
Yes, yes.
In this Seva Rasa, I remember a cousin of my father, he was giving medicines to the villagers, but then the villagers had a belief, my uncle had a belief that if we take any money, then the medicine will not work on the person. And the people who are taking the medicines, they had a belief, if they don't pay something, the medicine will not work on that. That, in between that, both are Nishkam and Satam are going together, and the beautiful things are happening where this exactly the spirituality developed. So, while reviving this, when you were talking about this, our Prabhritti and Vipritti Marga, I was really wondering that when this revival of our this sleeping giant of our strength and that intellectual and internal spiritual power came in the 19th century, now that movement, when it is coming over there, I hope as Professor Chopra and our IKS now we are doing it, with the new urbanization which is coming up, and the slowly when our realizations has gone in the backdrop, and the mutual interdependent lifestyle has got changed. Here exactly I am wondering how you say that our spirituality of today will be getting towards which directions.
Thank you. In fact, as you have already mentioned in detail, what is going on and what changes we are seeing now, we are witnessing now in our urban sector, in the rural sector, you have correctly pointed out. Anyhow, I may a little differ, that's a separate issue. But you see, what we believe and we see also in our practical life when we deal with the people, both in the urban sector and the rural sector, we see that today the need of this type of spiritual movement is more necessary, and not only necessary from the other point of view, from their standpoint, in fact, they are also demanding this type of spirituality. You see, the older days, this cave religion, those days are gone. The sages were there. They meditated, they realized wonderful things. But now, as Swamiji has told, new sages will be born. And those sages will be born in the midst of the duels and turbulence of the urban society. In the midst of the work field, in the midst of the office, they will be born. And they will work for the salvation of the humanity. And that is the Ramakrishna mission is doing now, trying to do now. Yes, I have to go a little bit
Specifically, for the last, specifically, one question is Mother. We know from our childhood days, we came to know that Mother Teresa received the Nobel Prize for Seva. But today, in this age, Swami Vivekananda, in 1893, the Seva and the Swami Vivekananda Seva, Jivogana Seva. Today's is Niskam Seva. So we want to specifically enlighten by Swamiji or Ramakrishna Math the Seva, differences between the Seva and the motive, whether it was a Niskam Seva or Swami Vivekananda, what our Vedanta has told. Between these two, Seva of Mother Teresa versus Seva as we have been enlightened by the Swami Vivekananda and Ramakrishna.
Yes, thank you. But you see, kindly excuse me. I decline to comment anything on the seva activities of Mother Teresa because I don't know much of them. But what type of seva Ramakrishna mission, in fact Swami Vivekananda wanted, and what type of seva Ramakrishna mission is trying to offer to cater for the society, I have already told. You see, that was the very unique vision of Sri Ramakrishna, Shiva Jnani Yiva Seva. It is this latter statement, the second statement. This statement is preceded by another statement of Sri Ramakrishna. Jive doya korbar tuike, doya noy, Shiva gyane jivo Shiva. So you see, these are two specific, two different segments. One is jive doya. It was there, it is there. We show compassion. But when we tell Jiva Shiva, Shiva Jnani Jiva Seva, that means there is no point of compassion. He or she is the veritable form of God. We worship him or her. So this is not the compassion. This is only the puja, the worship. So when we are devotees, when we are worshippers, we worship them. We don't need any gratitude from them. No, whatever, they may forget me. Yes, we have given them something. Yes, we have built up. Ramakrishna Mission has built up so many community halls. They have built up a bridge. Ramakrishna Mission has forgot everything. All these things they have built up. People of the community, they are only preserving everything. Ramakrishna Mission does not want any payback. That's the thing Ramakrishna Mission is trying to convey. So this is our motive. I don't know what their motive is. Kindly excuse me. Please, sir.
Very quickly, so it's tangential to what Ramji also asked. And you alluded to this with Sister Nivedita's passage. There is a tendency, both in academic circles and also social justice discourse today, to divorce Swami Vivekananda from the traditional tether and project him as some sort of original rebel and then co-opt him into some kind of other directive. What is the mission's guidance on how do we deal with this? Because you made a very powerful argument for Swami Vivekananda's traditional anchor.
Sure. You see, these writings are very much available. If you read the complete works of Swamiji, especially his discourses with his disciples, Shastrajnananda Chakraborty, that was originally in Bengali, but it has been translated in our complete works. There you will find how Swamiji tried to present the philosophy of Sri Ramakrishna. Whatever Swamiji has told is nothing but the philosophy of Sri Ramakrishna, the statements of Sri Ramakrishna, the realization of Sri Ramakrishna, which was handed over to him by Sri Ramakrishna himself. So you see, Swamiji has specifically mentioned we must read all the statements of Sri Ramakrishna, their life, his life, through the Upanishads and Vedic texts, through our Indian scriptures. And on the other hand, we must try to relate our Indian scriptures with the statements of Sri Ramakrishna. So he said this in the case of Vivekananda. This should be our attitude while reading Sri Ramakrishna's and Swamiji's messages, because we must read it through our Indian scriptures, otherwise we will miss Vivekananda. In fact, this type of misinterpretation of Vivekananda is very much dangerous.
The guidance for academia with the Indian projects to make sure that we have this.
Yes. For that reason, we must read. If you read our, we have a large literature, large volumes of literature. If you read, you will find that in every literature, especially the commentaries on Swami Vivekananda, different articles, different compendiums that we are now publishing, you will find that all our monastic members and the academicians who are trained by ours, they are trying to relate the scriptures with Swamiji's words, or Swamiji's words with the scriptures. They should be debated.
Yeah, so in spirit, I just wanted to tell you, I was very happy to listen to this Prasara Sagam. So this is not something which is presented to us, which is not there in the scriptures. Even if you just take this most famous verse, Saudari Lahari,
Yes.
So this last point is something which is very important. That is what I want to just tell you. So what has been stated by these people very effectively, that will be acceptable to the age of particular period, is something which can be very easily connected. It is not something which is very different. So this is something which is a very important message that I wanted to reinstate. And I was very happy that the ending came like that. It is not a new philosophy that has been presented to us. I think that will be a problematic issue, which I think we should completely eliminate. Thank you.